welcome to this week's Property Matters on Dublin South FM, the show that brings global trends to an Irish audience. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or by email at hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Your host for today is myself, Carol Tallon. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, we are still recording remotely, so apologies for any poor sound quality throughout the show. First up, I'm delighted to be joined over the phone by Barry Cull, Head of Homes in South Dublin for AIB. Barry, thank you for joining us today. I know you've been a regular guest on the show, but we haven't spoken since the pandemic. So how are things with you first?
Yeah, and thanks for having me back, Carol. Yeah, I think a lot has changed since I was last on the show. All good, I suppose. Certainly in terms of ourselves, we are probably no more than any other business adapting as time goes on over the last couple of months to the different way of working and adapting to the different needs customers have had over the last couple of months. So it's certainly changed significantly from 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, let's just start with your own circumstances there. So are you working from home or are you back to the office at this stage?
I'm back into the office. So I had for April and May, I was working from home. So working from home and teaching on the side because I have a 4 and a 6-year-old.
Of course, homeschooling became the new reality, didn't it?
It convinced me, Carol, that I've probably chosen the right profession, that teaching wasn't for me. So yeah, my team, to be fair to them, so I was predominantly at home. My team were a mixture between being in a branch or working from home themselves, or kind of going between the two. So look, they were still available to meet customers or to talk to customers over the phone at any stage during the last couple of months. So to be fair, they showed great flexibility in it.
That's great. Well, look, obviously we're going to discuss new lending and maybe some of the more recent reports that came out over the past week or two. But I think first, just to address what's happening at the moment in terms of buyers who had maybe mortgage approval, and then obviously their employment situation changed. So, I mean, would it be fair to assume that's the majority of queries your team were dealing with over the past couple of months?
It is, yeah. So predominantly, as you say, we had a lot of customers that were approved and they were at various stages of that approval. So we had from initial approval in principle right through to people who had full letter of offer and were looking to close relatively quickly. So the guys have been dealing with those. We have probably with customers that were at offer letter, I suppose we were very anxious to make sure that they were still in a position to draw down the mortgage. If they're on the subsidy, we did a little bit of analysis to make sure that it was affordable, or that there was even a level of contingency, that it was affordable for a short period of time. Looking a little bit at the type of work they were doing, because customers. And this was probably what was interesting. A lot of the customers that were at letter of offer stage would have said they were happy to pause it themselves. And it's probably an interesting one in terms of customer behaviour. With customers, Carol, that were really prudent about this, looking at it and saying, do you know what, I'm not 100% sure of where I'll be income-wise, because we had people who were availing of the subsidy, or their employer was using the subsidy to pay them. We had people that were taking a pay cut, whether temporary or potentially more permanent. We had people that maybe were quite reliant on bonus, and they wouldn't have been as sure, and reasonably enough wouldn't have been as sure. And we did have a lot of people that came to us and said, look, we're actually going to hold off on this until we see how things go for the next few months. For our part, if you were at letter of offer, we were working to get that over the line for you.
Yeah, and actually that's the cohort, I suppose, that we would have gotten the most inquiries about. People who had their letter of offer, people who had actually signed their contracts and were waiting to close or waiting to draw down funds.
Yeah.
So I know I understand that there was a very bespoke approach taken. So each case had to be considered on its own merits. But just for people, say, who had signed contracts and that were under contractual pressure to close, but their income, obviously, situation had changed. What was the bank approach there?
So with any of our letter of offer customers, we essentially added in an extra layer of credit analysis. So we were looking for confirmation that they were still being paid, even if partially it was through the subsidy. We were looking for, in some cases, maybe a letter of comfort from the employer to give us the reassurance that they would still be working over the next while. And I suppose in general, we were just communicating with them and chatting to them about how they felt about it and how they felt their own prospects were. I think on the letter of offer side of it, we had a tiny of minutiae of customers that were looking to progress that we didn't. And when I say tiny, I mean minuscule. The vast majority, 95% plus of customers that were at letter of offer that were looking to close that mortgage. Initially, I think there was probably just a little bit of panic over it, particularly for customers that were in April, looking to draw in April or right at the end of March. But no, we probably took a quite a customer first approach to that, given how late they were in the process, and as long as we could satisfy ourselves that in the longer term that they'd be capable of repaying it, then we went ahead and drew that mortgage.
Yeah, it was a particularly difficult. It was particularly difficult for that cohort of buyers because what we saw through our own experience was that most vendors took a reasonable approach. Certainly with the second-hand homes, there might have been maybe a little bit more pressure put on people not to renegotiate. However, we did come across one particular developer in one of the commuter counties of Dublin, and that developer was where there was contracts for new homes. They were trying to enforce the date that was on the contract, which was incredibly unfair. But they took a while to take a reasonable approach, and it was something that added enormous stress onto the buyers in that case. So, I'm delighted to hear that there has been such a reasonable approach being taken because, again, in our experience, that was the majority of developers selling new homes as well. But there was still some people who were caught, and those contractual obligations were definitely held over their head, and they were in a very difficult position. And again, I know maybe the banks came into some criticism here, but obviously people understand there's a prudent approach here that needs to be taken, that it would be irresponsible to allow borrowers to go forward where their circumstances had changed, that perhaps we're not going to bounce back in 3 months' time.
Exactly, yeah. And look, I think as we went through this, no more than any other business, we evolved our approach as we went through April and May. The time aspect of it was interesting because I think, look, was there an extra time element for us in maybe assessing cases just before a drawdown? There probably was, but to be fair, and you said it there, Carol, the sellers in almost all cases were very reasonable. Developers were very reasonable and understanding of the circumstances. You mentioned we definitely saw a level of renegotiation in April where people might have been able to get themselves a 5 or 10% decrease on that price. Now, I'm not sure that's going to be long-term sustainable given that the way the market has gone since. But no, I think we all kind of got through it together with a little bit of adapting our previous approach. And that's probably been the challenge. I think we've all learned a lot from it over the last 3 months.
Oh, absolutely. Across so many things. And in fact, I'm not sure that we've even fully appreciated yet the psychological impact back into the marketplace, or whether it's going ahead with the transaction. We still don't fully know what the impacts are going to be. But say now, as we are kind of in the early stages of July, what is the situation here in terms of, I presume most of the mortgage applicants whose financial situation and whose work situation changed temporarily, are they pretty much back to normal, as in, are they back into the workplace?
Yeah, I think so it is with the phasing back of and the loosening of restrictions. I think gradually we've seen that. In the early stages, we were pausing. So the early stage customers who maybe had approval in principle, we had paused those customers just to see how May and June went. We've adapted that as people have got back to work and the economy's opened up a little bit. We're in a position now, even with new customers, to be able to give them an approval conditional on the subsidy before they draw down. What we're seeing, actually, again, back to that prudent approach from customers themselves, is that anybody who is in a little bit of doubt over what their own employment scenarios will be over the next couple of months is talking to us and exploring their options. But to be fair, not necessarily seeing any overcommitment from customers either.
Okay.
There's a real, I suppose, sensible approach to this from customers. So yeah, that's kind of become a feature of this. Look, we've moved our position on it as it has gone on, and we'll continue to adapt as the economy opens up as well.
Yeah, look, it's the approach that every customer-facing business needs to be taking. So again, we're still at quite early stages to assess the impact. But one of the things that we've seen over the past 5 and 6 weeks, as estate agencies nationwide have opened up, anecdotally, there seems to be strong demand in terms of viewing figures. Now, I know viewings continued in a virtual manner throughout the period of lockdown, but now that the in-person viewings have started up again, estate agencies in most parts of the country are recording quite strong demand. So is that translating into new mortgage inquiries now for AIB?
It is. So our application levels are back at the level that they were in January and February.
Okay.
Particularly over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think, and as you mentioned there, from my own conversations with estate agents, there is a steady traffic through their viewings. Probably from my own team, anecdotally, the customers that are coming in looking for a mortgage now are very, very clear on what they want since then. So one of the questions that would never have been contemplated probably at a mortgage application now is they are looking at buying somewhere where they can work from home, potentially.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a period of time, whether it was younger couples maybe living with or single people living with parents that have now decided whether whatever that experience was for the 3 months, that they've decided now is my time to buy. I suppose they have a very clear view of what they want, and I think we have customers coming in and saying, look, I actually what this last 3 months has convinced me is that I want to buy a home, and look, I'd like to get my approval and I want to start viewings as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Where before we offer a 12-month approval, and it wouldn't be unusual, Carol, for somebody to get the approval, not do a huge amount with it for a couple of months, and then start viewings. But the customer behaviour here is very clear, very focused almost on what they want to do. So that has definitely been a change for us.
That's an interesting one. And that actually mirrors very closely some results from Zoopla and Rightmove in the UK. This change in consumer behaviour towards property, that not only are they much more focused on what they want to do, but actually the last few months has definitely given people an opportunity to reassess what they're looking for in a property. So, for example, one of the trends we're seeing, and actually my home in the last couple of weeks released reports on what their search histories for buyers, prospective buyers have been. And, there's been a huge increase in properties, particularly on the west coast of Ireland, and a huge increase in property searches for anything below 100,000. So, definitely people, there has been a shift, and it's not just seen in Ireland, we're seeing it across the UK. One of the other shifts we've seen is this move towards a more sustainable approach to living. And that's something that AIB has kept pace with. The last time you were on the show, you talked about the new AIB green mortgage offering, and that was at very early stages, just after Christmas. So where has that moved to now?
So we've launched, I suppose, a special fixed rate for customers that have an energy rated home that's energy rated between A1 and B3. So very much focused on the sustainability element of and driven by demand as well. So I suppose customers are motivated now to produce or to purchase a home that reduces their carbon footprint. So we're responding to their demand. It's our lowest fixed rate, so it's 2.45%, which I suppose it's a show of intent from AIB in that we take sustainability very seriously, and our role in that space as well. So what I've noticed, actually, again, Carol, since it and with any new product launch, the first couple of months are always a learning experience. It is one product where we have had people directly approaching us saying, I'm actually looking to talk to you about one of your green mortgages. No mention of rate, just I want to talk to you about your green mortgage. So that it has definitely hit a positive nerve with the customers, and existing customers can move on it as well. So
that's an interesting one. But now it might be too early in the data side to be able to tell this, but because the energy rating has to be between an A1 and a B3, that's primarily going for new or newer homes. Does it apply to people who are buying a property with the intention of renovating to that standard?
So if you've somebody that's buying and renovating, we're able to, once they have it renovated, we're able to move them on to that rate once they have the BER cert at that stage. So and again, it's something we've had a lot of customers come in. So the demand for top-up mortgages over the last few months for, I suppose, energy improving home improvements has increased. So yeah, look, it was important for us as well that existing customers and customers who may not have a home rated at that energy rating, but that we have the intention that once they get there, we're also able to offer this to them. So yeah, very, very positive, and from a sustainability perspective even, and certainly good reaction to it from the market.
That's good. Look, whenever you're talking about new product offerings that are actually coming from a demand base, we know we're on the right track. So that's an important one there. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. Barry, thank you so much for joining me today. My thanks again. That was Barry Cull, Head of Homes in South Dublin, AIB. We need to take another quick break. Stay tuned.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
Welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or by email at hello@iPropertyRadio.com. I'm delighted to be joined now by Damien Kilgannon, Head of Property at the IDA. Damien, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Carol.
Damien, we were just chatting there before we came on air that it has been an interesting few months. So look, you might just tell us, I suppose, as Head of Property at IDA, you must have been dealing with a lot over the last kind of 4 to 5 months. So you might just give us an overview really of how the 2020 has been for you so far.
Okay, so I suppose in terms of IDA, it has been a very challenging period across the globe. So we were dealing probably with shutting down offices from a much earlier period in our Asian markets. So with 31 offices worldwide, we were probably dealing with this pandemic from a facilities perspective from late 2019 and early 2020. From a construction perspective in Ireland, I suppose the impact of lockdown had across our 36 business and technology parks and strategic sites in our client companies, we had directly impacted, over 30 small, medium, and large scale construction projects. And then across our client portfolio, there was many major projects which were brought to a halt. So, supporting our clients, supporting, I suppose, our development projects and our design teams through that period was a huge part of what the team has been working to ensure that we got through it, and that we maintained maintained the activity levels so that we could restart construction as soon as the lockdown ended.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you had the perspective of maybe what was happening in other jurisdictions. So actually, in terms of the bases, the 31 international offices that the IDA has, obviously other jurisdictions opened up and restarted their construction and other industries prior to Ireland. So are there any maybe insights from the experiences of your international offices that you can bring to Ireland?
There certainly are, and I think that we've been working very closely with other government departments and with our parent department, Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation, over the last number of months. And the Return to Work Safely Protocol, which was published in early May by the Department of Business, it aligns itself, to international experience of reopening offices safely, the implementation of social distancing, the correct amount of signage, the correct amount of in terms of utilization of offices, and ensuring that full risk assessments are completed of office spaces before staff reoccupy. And that Return to Work Safely Protocol and the 5 stages originally published by government of returning to the workplace and offices being at the back end of that, following the virtual first model. A lot of that was informed by, I suppose, experience of client companies and experience of IDA, and indeed experience of the general public arising from the Asia experience and reopening the Asian markets over the last number of months.
Okay, of course. And, you talk about the importance of working closely with government departments here, but obviously there was such, I suppose, it was an interesting time politically, as well as everything else that was going on in the country, that you were dealing with a minister and a department that was likely to be changing and did in fact change over. So how has that impacted on maybe some of the strategies that needed to be implemented?
And I think to be fair to all of what was happening at the time, government didn't act as if they were in transition. Government acted very decisively. The Minister for Business, Enterprise and Innovation up until a week and a half ago acted as the minister, not as a minister in transition. Decisions were made, even when we look at the publication of the Return to Work Safely Protocol, the other guidance documents that were published during that period. They were published on Saturdays, they were published on Sundays, they were published at night. Government got on with doing the business that government needed to do, and the transition happened very seamlessly. So as a member of the leadership team in IDA, we didn't feel a difference as a result of a change in minister. We continue to work with the department very successfully throughout that period, and the fiscal system ensured that the department was supporting the needs of IDA and its clients, Enterprise Ireland and its clients, and across the enterprise sector. So I think that transition happened seamlessly, and credit to all the parties of government, including the opposition, who ensured that the support was there for omnibus legislation that was required in order to support the legislation amendments that were required to ensure that Ireland successfully implemented lockdown and brought itself on the road where we are, with very low numbers in terms of infection and good control, and a good example internationally.
Yeah, that's such an important point that really can't be stated enough, and its importance can't be overstated. That the government of the day didn't act as if they were in transition, which was so fundamental to the things that have gone right over the last number of months. So it's a really great point. But I suppose taking it back to the IDA. There will be people listening. Obviously, this show is targeted at members of the planning, construction, property, and PropTech sectors. But I'm quite sure that there will be many people who don't have maybe a good handle on the property department and function within the IDA. So, we might just take it back a step there, and maybe your role and the division there within property.
Okay, so I lead a team of almost 50 people. We are split into we're split into 6 teams. So within the property function, and they are the property marketing team, which assists the entire property market to ensure that we market Ireland as a successful place to do business, and we market our properties and private sector properties. To ensure that solutions are provided for client companies. We have a legal governance compliance team to keep us all compliant, and we have the global facilities team, and then we have 3 development teams that work across 3 different portfolios and support the business of IDA. In terms of what we do, then, so in terms of what does the property portfolio of IDA look like? IDA property portfolio is spread across 36 business and technology parks all the way, spanning the depth and breadth of the country. And it has 12 strategic site land banks with major infrastructure there to support major projects like data centers, like biopharma and pharma manufacturing. And in terms of providing landing spaces, examples of projects which have landed on our strategic sites over the last number of years, include really big names such as Wuxi Biologics in Dundalk, who announced an investment of over 300 million. Johnson & Johnson in Limerick, Abbott and AbbVie in Sligo, Stryker in Cork, West Pharma in Waterford, Wasdale again in Dundalk, Amazon in Drogheda, Edwards Pharma in Limerick. And these projects, while strategic sites, and there are only 12 of them across the country, they make up almost half of the land portfolio of IDA. They are highly serviced sites that take many years to assemble, but without them, we can't attract these very large infrastructure dependent, utility services dependent investments into Ireland. And not just into Ireland, but into Ireland and its regional hubs. So the property division, I suppose, is there to ensure that we continue to invest in the infrastructure and the solutions necessary to make Ireland's regions and Dublin attractive for future investment, to assist in the marketing of Ireland and its property solutions, and to be a huge enabler. The availability of high quality property options that allow world leading and rapidly growing companies to quickly and easily set up and scale up is absolutely critical. And at the end of the day, that is what has made Ireland very successful. In terms of winning projects, we have clusters of activities, we have excellent skill sets, we have an international talent pool, we have good reference clients. But without a functioning property and construction sector, Ireland cannot win large scale.
And that's a sentiment that we hear echoed not just from the public sector, but from the private sector also. But again, a lot of the strategic land banks you've mentioned there, you're looking at supporting regional development as well. So under the new government, the National Planning Framework, do we know how seamlessly that's going to be adopted? We know it's going to be revised. Do we know how to what extent it's likely to be revised?
We don't know that. And we will, as IDA, as a property division and as an organisation generally, we will feed in to that process. The National Development Plan sets out a list of projects to be delivered to 2022 and a 116 euro investment plan. And we track that very carefully because there are so many critical projects within that plan, whether they be motorway infrastructure or other public transport infrastructure, that are absolutely critical to enabling and facilitating the future development of strategic sites or towns or villages in regional Ireland, and opening up Dublin in terms of public transport. They are so critical that no matter what government and no matter what review takes place, I suppose the business case for those projects has been made and continues to be made. And with a growing population and with all of the demands that we see on these pieces of infrastructure, I suppose the fundamentals of the national planning framework will remain strong, and those infrastructure projects will remain absolutely critical in those regional locations. And it will be IDAs. We will be very strong in advocating for to ensure that we remain that we remain honest and true to the objectives and the targets of not only the national planning framework itself and its long-term agenda, but the short-term goals in terms of the €116 billion plan.
Absolutely. But when we talk about the infrastructure supporting regional development, it'd be remiss not to incorporate the residential market into that, because we know we've seen in the private sector, we've seen industry leaders speaking out about issues within the housing market in Ireland, whether it's availability of rent or new homes to purchase, or the affordability of either of those sectors. We know that that's something that has an impact on business. So do you feel that there's an adequate kind of tie-in there?
In terms of tie-in, I think there probably is. What we have to get right, one of the major pillars of the national planning framework is compact growth. And we see compact growth and placemaking and urban redevelopment being talked about. And what we need to see is delivery. We have, we've many examples around the country where it isn't currently financially viable to develop apartments in some locations. What can we do to unlock that? Where heights are not being permitted in certain locations where maybe they're very appropriate for higher density development for people to live in city centres. In terms of support, so supply side measures in terms of increasing the number of units delivered in certain locations aligned to the national planning framework, but then demand side supports in terms of that locked out generation, professional couples earning between 60 and 100,000 that find it difficult to buy a house because of high rental costs. It's about, and through the national planning framework and through the programme for government, I remain confident and we remain confident that we will see, while there is probably a temporary disruption as a result of COVID-19, that we will see an increase in the supply of housing, and we've seen a significant increase in the supply of housing since 2013, and that we continue to see that, and that supports the skills base in regional locations to continue to develop and where they have attractive places to live and work within urban centres and compact growth centres.
And to be fair to our newly appointed housing minister, in his first address, he spoke about the challenge that he's prioritising, which is the affordability of housing. It's an immediate challenge, as well as a doubling of social housing output and supporting private housing output. They were very much aimed at buyers and consumers. It's unclear yet what the supply side initiatives are likely to be. Do you have any insight into that?
I suppose it is, at this point, we don't have, we haven't sat down with the new housing minister, and we haven't been engaged with his department since his appointment. But certainly we maintain a level of confidence that all of the various measures taken by the last government and the soundings that are coming from our new minister are all extremely positive in his what appears to be the strategy, and certainly the programme for government is very strong on the need to address the housing shortages. And I think in terms of what will success look like for this government, I'd say one major yardstick is going to be how it tackles the housing crisis. And the second part of that is that huge progress has been made over the last number of years. While headlines can be very stark when it comes to housing, a huge amount of progress has been made over the last few years. Housing output has increased significantly. The development of the urban development and building height guidelines, the apartment design guidelines. There's been, the establishment of the Land Development Agency. A huge amount of progress has been made, and it's now important that we continue along that path and we address and we continue to address the issues which are challenging housing delivery, and especially housing delivery in regional locations.
I think that they're all fair points, and I suppose finally then to come full circle, how important is construction and indeed the property sector to the success of the IDA?
And I think to be frank on this, absolutely critical. When we sit down with international companies and we talk about Ireland and we talk about our reference cells, we talk about the success that other companies have enjoyed here. We talk about them not only on their investment journey, but on their development journey. We talk about the planning process. We talk about the construction process of other companies. We talk about, you're always looking to a reference cell and you're always introducing them to. So the capacity of the construction market, and we look at that when we're having those conversations, and we always remark at the number of successful examples that we have to refer to. And often we see that companies, and the FDI community is very close and they talk to each other. And you will often find that Irish companies are brought abroad again by our FDI base to work on projects, whether that be data centres or pharma manufacturing plants. Our indigenous construction sector is now travelling abroad with companies they've built relationships with in Ireland to complete major projects in Europe or across the world, which is a huge which is a huge credit to the industry.
I know there's so much more we could go into, and we just don't have time today, but I certainly hope to revisit these topics. So that was Damien Kilgannon, Head of Property at the IDA Ireland. Damien, thank you so much for being with us today. Now we need to take another quick break. My apologies again for any sound quality issues. Once again, we are, of course, recording remotely while the station remains in lockdown. So please bear with us while we resolve any sound issues that we have. And we'll take another quick break. Stay tuned.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
And welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. I'm now joined over the phone by Ronan McGrath, Managing Director at McGrath Construction Consultants. And Ronan is on site, so apologies for any poor sound quality. Ronan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks very much for having me, Carol.
So Ronan, it's been a while since we've spoken last. A lot has changed. How have the last few months been for McGrath Construction Consultants?
Well, I definitely describe it as being interesting anyway, It's been certainly something new that we've had to deal with. But that's the construction industry for you. There's always something new that you have to deal with, and you just have to grow thick skin and learn how to handle it. But it's been very interesting, and it's been a big change for us. We kind of got to it in early March when it first all started to go wrong. We'll say we had a large amount of work on our books at a time. So we sort of had 5 or 6 weeks worth of work in front of us. So we weren't too concerned in the first kind of instance. But once it started to get into April and May, when the lockdown came and actually the sites closed, that stopped a lot of our on-site work and our ongoing work. But a lot of the work for tendering and helping contractors and getting ready for part fives. A lot of that stayed going. So while we were quiet on the live jobs, we still had a lot to do. So we stayed going. I mean, like, nobody got let go or anything like that, or we never actually stopped working throughout that time. So it's been interesting. And then I suppose the last month since we've all been back in the office, we've had a quiet week to kind of start with everybody getting used to the new regulations and doing all their health and safety and everything like that. And I think the last month, then the last 3 weeks, we've had a very, very busy last 3 to 4 weeks. A lot of inquiries, a lot of jobs coming back, from the dead, so to speak. And it's been really busy. So it's been great.
Okay, interesting. That's a great euphemism there. It has definitely been interesting times. But look, you've touched on something really important, and that is the resilience of Ireland's construction sector. And it's not just Ireland's construction sector. Construction is something by its very nature that needs to be resilient to be able to thrive. But, you were talking about how things have been busy in terms of tendering, and that's something that I've heard echo from everybody we've spoken to over the past few months. I don't think anybody in the construction industry stopped working. Everybody was working particularly hard to try secure sites that had to be shut down to make sure that momentum could be regained the second you went back on sites. But in terms of tenders, have you found there's been much change from, say, work that you had tendered for previously? Have the briefs changed at this stage?
It's hard to say. It's really still too early to say. Right now, the last month has been busy, and everyone I've been talking to has been busy. So I don't think that rates will be affected too much. It's hard to say because there should be a change because of the new COVID regulations. Work will be slower. Prelims will be extra. But also, there will be people who will be keen for the work because, they might have been laid off or certain jobs might be cancelled. But I'm not seeing too many effects of jobs being cancelled or jobs not going ahead, or there's going to be, this idea that there's going to be loads more lads available and hungry for work at the minute. I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen that happen yet, that this loosening up of labour and availability of labour. I haven't seen that yet. But I think people at the moment are just kind of going with it. They're kind of just saying, right, look, let's continue on as normal and see how it happens over the next few months. And, there has been a few COVID payments made in terms of, to compensate people for the lockdown and everything like that. But right now, I don't think the effects of it have actually taken place. If you were to ask me right now, I don't think the effects have taken place just yet.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. We don't know what the full impacts are going to be because everybody's so concerned and focused on kind of troubleshooting and firefighting right now. But in terms of labour, we know that at least 20% of Ireland's construction workforce. They're people who are not living full time in Ireland necessarily. So we know that at the start or just before the shutdown, people who weren't living in Ireland full time or weren't settled in Ireland full time returned to their own countries, and they haven't come back. A lot of them because they're going to be facing a quarantine period, so it doesn't make sense for them to come back yet. So we know that labour is still something that's actually in difficulty despite all of the chaos that has happened over the past few months. But in terms of work at McGrath Construction Consultants, what kind of construction projects is your team working on at the moment?
So a lot of what we're doing is a lot of, multi-unit residential units. So you're talking housing estates, apartment blocks. A lot of it is that. And again, a lot of those projects, they stalled for 7 weeks, but they're back going now, full steam ahead. I mean, we still have a homelessness crisis, so that hasn't changed. It's probably gotten worse with the COVID. That hasn't changed. So those projects are all going full steam ahead. Another 2 or 3 are to start in the coming months. So those are all absolutely going full steam ahead. We've a few then that we're working on. The likes of the other side of the business that we do with contractors and homeowners is the extension renovations. So those seem to be going ahead for now as normal. Again, life does go on for the most part in the building industry. People moving house, people's family situations change, and all these things keep still happening. So they've gone ahead so far for the most part. So a lot of that will be extension renovations of old kind of former corporation housing or old estates from the 70s and 80s, and extension renovation. People spending 200,000-300,000 euro, actually getting these to their own liking. So that's been a lot of what we've been doing, So sort of on two fronts, there's been the extension renovations still continuing, but very much so powering ahead. I would say is the multi-unit residential for sale for private, and particularly the sale for semi-state bodies and housing agencies. They're still plowing ahead. The homelessness crisis hasn't gone away, and the need for housing hasn't gone away. Supply is still the number one issue. So that's not gone anywhere. Those are flying ahead.
That's a fair assessment. And we will come back to talking about maybe some of the social housing that is ongoing and that needs to ramp up. But in terms of the renovations, I think that's an interesting one, because one of the trends we've seen, and in fact, architects have spoken about how they've got an increase in new business and phone calls from people who, having been essentially locked into their homes for the last number of months with family, while people were trying to work from home and kids were trying to be homeschooled, while keeping all the family entertained and keeping everybody sane. And really what we've discovered is that, this trend towards open living doesn't work when every member of the family is at home and trying to function independently. So in terms of extensions, are you seeing any trends maybe that you might not have seen prior to the lockdown?
No, and it might be a bit early for us as QSs to say, because by the time if the architects are getting these queries now, we'll see them 3 to 6 months down the line. But certainly on the jobs that I am on now, office pods are a big. The garage being turned into an office. Those are a big thing at the moment that we're seeing straight away. Home offices, playroom / home office is something that's quite common now. So people are making allowances for home working. However long that trend lasts is another debate I'll get into. But people are making accounts for home office. They're either getting a pod, an office pod, or an outside building, or they're making the box room. That's their office. That's the office space. Or even sometimes people are they are for whether they're right or wrong, they're putting it into their open plan kitchen, living, dining area, and they're having something that's something that they can put away at the end of the day, and pull out at the start of the day. So we all had challenges working from home, and we all kind of discovered what it was like. But I think we'll see those trends fully in 3 to 6 months. But from what we've seen for jobs that have been existing has been repurposing or getting an office pod out the back or out the side or whatever. But repurposing is definitely I say probably the main trend. I would actually say no. Sorry, I would say getting the office pods and repurposing existing rooms are definitely the two main trends that we've seen so far. But I'd say in 3 to 6 months down the line, we'll be seeing something. We'll be seeing something totally different.
Yeah, well, I suppose the working from home is such an immediate priority because, it's interesting from our own point of view in Property District, we are already a remote team. So even though we have an office in Dublin, we have our web designer and partner in the business down in Kerry. We have a graphic designer in Canada, we're already quite remote. So one of the interesting things that we've discovered was we presumed everybody would be going back to their office. And when it came time for us to go back, actually, we decided not to do it just yet. But I thought we were alone in that, where now when I'm speaking to businesses, there seems to be kind of cut-off points of maybe September to return to the office, and some are actually pushing it out till next January if they have a large workforce to phase this return. So, Ronan, you're based in Wexford, is it?
That's right, yeah. We've an office in Wexford and an office in Sandyford.
Okay, so actually one of the interesting stats I saw from My Home was that the My Home searches were actually showing people who wanted to live and work from home and commute from Wicklow. Those searches were up 70%, and for people looking towards Wexford, those searches were up 90%. So that's huge. Wexford is definitely seen as a desirable area for today's house hunters.
Yeah, well, I'm currently moving house at the minute, so just tell people not to buy anything in Wexford until my deal is done. Then they can come ahead, because it's the best county in Ireland. But yeah, look, Wexford will become there's a new road, so there's motorway all the way beyond Enniscorthy now. So I mean, an hour and 10 minutes would get you to Dublin from Enniscorthy. Parked, you'd be parked wherever you're going off the M50 in an hour and 10 minutes these days. So it's a really good road now. So people will be coming down to Wexford, and there is a good few developments going on down here. So it wouldn't surprise me, especially if people are going to be working from home that little bit more. Now, whether this working from home trend continues is a matter for debate. I don't know how long it will last. I would say maybe people working from home a day or two, and I'd say there will be certain jobs that particularly technical IT jobs that don't involve a whole load of interaction with a team. That could certainly I could certainly see that being done a lot more at home. But certainly when you're part of a team and you're part of and you're providing a service to clients, I would see this trend kind of not evaporating away to nothing. Certainly it will change, and it has opened people's minds about working from home 1 or 2 days a week. But I see the trend evaporating away over the next month, a couple of months, maybe a year, because people get fed up. People get fed up very quickly of, where's this lad? Oh, he's not in today, he's in Wednesday. And I need to get these two lads to sit down and talk to each other. Well, he's not in until Friday. I can see how it's going to get very frustrating very quickly. And it's like a lot of things that, it's quite acceptable now, because, we are in the situation that we're in for people to be working away and working remotely, and people being in different places. But very quickly, I want to say very quickly, I mean, sometime in the next 12 months, I would imagine people getting fed up with this remote working in terms of, trying to run a team in different offices, that you can't just walk in and go, what's the situation is this? What's the status at a glance? What's happening at a glance? I would imagine that trend would evaporate fairly quickly, and leave what will be left will be a more open mind to people working from home a number of days a week. But I think just the whole might change.
Yeah, actually, I hope you're wrong on that, because I think the tools are in place to allow us to work much more seamlessly. And in fact, I think some of the tools that were supporting working from home have really improved, and they've really been tested, and where improvements need to be made, I feel they've really improved over the last couple of months. So I actually hope you're wrong about that, but who knows, we might be having a very different conversation in a year's time. But before we let you go, you might just explain very quickly about Elevation Construction Network that you're involved with.
Yeah, that's my baby, the Elevation Construction Network over the last few years, and we were quite successful with that, particularly in the initial phases and over the last few years. So what we do is we set up a network. I suppose it was a cluster for businesses in and connected to the construction industry. And what we do is we meet every couple of weeks. We exchange information, we exchange leads, and it's a business group for people looking to expand and improve. Because we often get speakers in, and we often help with that and collaborate and work together. And it's basically just made the businesses that are contained in it, just made them all stronger, got them all connected, and it's been fantastic. It's been a great success. We started it in 2016, and we're still going. We won an award in 2016. It was Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur. We won the Wexford Heat for the startup section. We're very happy. We're very happy with that. It was under 35s, by the way, before you make a smart comment about young entrepreneur there, Carol.
I wasn't even going to think of it, Ronan, honestly.
Exactly. So yeah, and it's been great, and it's been something that's I suppose helped us bring our business up. And I suppose the catchphrase is elevate your business to the next level, and that's what a lot of the businesses that we've been connected to are doing. Is they're trying to connect with people, and they're trying to drive their own businesses forward. And it's a lot easier to do that with people that are doing the same thing than it is to try to do that on your own. And there's natural connections in the construction industry between trades and professionals. And it's good to have people that you can rely on, and people that you're working with consistently, that you've got that level of dependability, you've got that level of consistent work, you've got that level of consistent performance. And we found that when people have joined us, that it's really helped their business, and they've contributed to the group, and we've helped them. So it's something that we're very proud of, and it's something that's still going, and we're very happy with it. That's actually another example of something that's been done online. We've been doing all the Zoom meetings over the last while. And that's something that's I suppose had to adapt as well. A lot of the networks, instead of meeting people physically, that's had to adapt to Zoom as well. So all those meetings have been held online now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, I think the construction industry, there's definitely room for more. I'm not sure networking, is the full description of it, the term there, because it's about so much more. It really is about building trust. This is an industry that depends on connecting with people and having a relationship of trust so you can bring them in on projects. It's a really important one. So I'm delighted to hear that that's going well. So again, you've given us plenty to think about there. So my thanks again to Ronan McGrath, Managing Director of McGrath Construction Consultants, for joining us today. That's it from us today. Thank you for listening into Property Matters on Dublin South FM. You can get in touch with the show on Twitter at iProperty Radio or by emailing hello@ipropertyradio.com. Also, thank you to Peter Rice on sound and show producer Katie Talon of Hear Me Roar Media. We're back at the same time next week. From myself, Carol Talon, and all the team here, stay safe.